Martin Luther King Jr. was a man with a dream, a clergyman, advocate, an activist. But for these women, he was more than that. He was a father, brother, and family man.
He would look at me as I was growing up and said, "You're going to be a very pretty lady. Your daddy and I are going to have to watch out and chase the guys away." And I used to just laugh, but I felt so safe because I knew he had my back.
When my father would come home off of the road, we had a game we would engage in. It was a kissing game. And he had identified different spots on his face for each one of us. I was a little bit jealous because my sister had one right off to the side of the mouth. And mine was I remember mine being on the forehead. But that's an experience that when I was 10 years old, I remembered as if it were yesterday. So I remember him kind of as a fun, loving person. And if you brought my siblings in the room, they would say the same thing.
My favorite memory was in Ebenezer Church. After church, he would stand in a line to greet the members, and he would see me down the door, and he would step into the aisle, and I would run down the aisle, and he would pick me up and give me a big hug.
I married Dr. King's brother, and then I came into this lovable family. You know, I remember him as a warm, loving, supportive family member.
He and my father, Reverend A.D. King, used to preach together. They were called the Sons of Thunder. And so to know Martin, our Uncle ML, as a preacher, as a father, we'd love to go to their home. And he would be there, his laughter, he would tinkle a few notes on the piano. So that's the man that I remember, not just the leader. And my mother may tell you he loved sweet potato pie.
Dr. King's vision was clear: equality among all men and women, regardless of color, creed, or race.
I have a dream.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. often talked about the beloved community. That's the human family, one race, one human race, where we would be able to actually love each other and treat each other as brothers and sisters. And I believe that that was a major, major point.
I would say that we're working and moving up the same road toward the same goal, which is freedom and first-class citizenship.
But his dream soon turned into a nightmare.
I remember the story when the house was bombed. She was actually the one in the home. And people don't realize that the first manifestation of an act of violence occurred with her present and not my father. And so when he got home, he wanted to check on her, and he was just amazed by her calm. And I think that nature in and of itself gave him a kind of strength and assurance to do the things that he did.
And one thing that stood out in my mind that I will never, ever forget, Dr. King had been arrested, and he got home about 11 o'clock one night, and I was sitting in the living room in the dark. So when he came in, he was tugging at his tie, you know. He said, "You know what?" I say, "What?" He said, "You know, they tried to choke me, you know, with my tie. The more they threaten and abuse me, the more that I would love them and forgive them." That is my first beginning and seeing him in the role that he came to play.
In order to demonstrate our commitment to nonviolence, we declare a day of penance.
Dr. King's drive and determination helped him achieve more for racial equality than anyone else ever had, but ultimately led to his demise.
When Kennedy was assassinated, my mother and father were together, and he said, you know, that's what's going to happen to me.
The day that I heard, I was preparing to go to an ROTC ball. I was having a dress made, and it was a pretty dress. It was going to be a pretty periwinkle blue. And I was looking at the ruffles. It came on the news. I remember looking at the television, and I went like, oh my goodness.
And I was all by myself, and I was watching the news, and as I looked at him, he was delivering the speech, been to the, to the mountaintop. And so naturally, I just got glued to the television. I couldn't move, I froze. And so when he got to the part that he said that he was not fearing any man, his chest went up and his eyes glistened like I'd never seen them before, I said, ooh, something doesn't seem right, doesn't feel right. I said, something it just ain't right.
And we interrupt this broadcast to say that we've just received word that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has been shot in Memphis. And I was frightened.
I just said, oh my Lord, oh my Lord, oh my Lord.
The community went up in shambles. In the African-American community, there were riots everywhere. And that had to be quelled. And I think Mother's stance on April 8th, when she led the march he was supposed to lead in Memphis the day before his funeral, when she called for nonviolence, and that we must continue in the tradition of love as he taught us, kind of helped to settle some of that. But I think her message, and this grieving widow who would have the right to be angry and react, in a violent manner, it causes you to pause and say, okay, if she can be that way, let's settle ourselves.
And my mother will say that after his brother left him, my father, Reverend A.D. King, was forever grieved because ML King had gone. And my father cried almost every night, and I remember those tears as well.
Martin Luther King Jr. was struck down April 4th, 1968. But the dream lived on, and his legacy was born.
And so when it finally happened, though they were taken aback, they were strong enough to keep going. Almost immediately, Aunt Coretta knew that she wanted to build a King Center.
Well, she sensed from the very beginning of the movement that they were a part of something great in history, and that's why she started holding on to and gathering his papers and making sure that today we have those writings.
Well, one of my favorite messages from him is, "He who is greatest among you shall be your servant." And when I think about it, when I first heard it, I was like, I didn't really understand it. I could just hear it over and over again, and every time I would go over my grandma's house and she would have the commemorative service booklet, and on the back of it you could see the quote. And I would always think about what it meant, and not until about a couple of years ago did I really understand that, he was greatest among us, and he was a servant to all his people.
The values that stood out for me the most, and it has a lot to do with how I was raised and the values that I was taught, love and justice. And that's a message that we can all carry through every part of our lives.
Consistent with the message of nonviolence, because that's really what his legacy is about.
Exactly.
Our mom said struggle is a never-ending progress. Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation.
And so I think he would congratulate us as a people, as a nation, for moving forward, and to say we've still got to keep moving.
We've had to share our parents all our lives. For my father to give his life for the benefit of humanity, then I'm willing to accept that kind of sacrifice and just deal with the tears as they flow.